that's the way to package these things if you want them to, like, if you want people to pick up on it and you want to like create a movement around this shit. I think it is just like, come to this sick show, and it also happens to be a Web3 event. So like, if you fuck with that, you can get involved with that. But like, just come hang out for the music.
Episode 3 of the Invest in Music podcast. Today we're here with Bloody White. Bloody White is an emerging artist in Web3, and today we're here to talk about his project Modern Romance. Bloody's been dropping NFTs for the last year and a half. He's been playing a ton of shows with me for Rising Tide and ETH Denver, and he's here to talk about what it means to be an artist in Web3. He's someone that I highly recommend keeping an eye out for, and it's really interesting to watch the perspective of someone who's building a career with Web3 at the center. So without further ado, let's get into it. Episode 3, Bloody White. All right, episode 3 of the Invest in Music podcast. Bloody White, how are we feeling today, man?
I'm feeling well, man. I feel a little hungover from the show last night, but I'm doing good.
Yeah, where were we last night? Tell the people.
We were at the Rising Tide O2 event, and I played a set. We got Slowjack, we got DLG, we got lots of interesting acts, and everybody crushed it.
Well, you've been playing a lot of live shows at these NFT conferences, man. So I want to get your perspective on it. But before we go into the depths of the nuance with the ETH conferences, for those who aren't familiar with you, why don't you give us a quick background on Bloody White and what people should know about you?
My real name is Lucas. I have an artist project named Bloody White. I'm 22 years old, and I've been making music for about 10 years. I started out producing electronic stuff mostly. And then in 2017, I got into like songwriting and singing and all of that. So I've sort of just been developing this project ever since. And yeah.
10 years, then you're 22. So you're starting making music when you were 12 years old. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah.
How does one discover the ability to make music at age 12?
YouTube. Like, I think Madion, he had this you remember that mashup on YouTube that went viral?
Yeah.
It was that shit that did it for me. I was like, I need whatever like controller that is. So I like badgered my parents to get me one for Christmas, and it came with like a light version of Ableton. And so I just like fucked around with it. I did not understand how it worked at all. So I was just like making terrible beats for like 2 years, just like fucking around. But eventually, I sort of got the hang of it.
What was it that put you on to Madion's mashup video at age 12?
Well, I think the first electronic music I was introduced to was through Tron Legacy, that movie. Daft Punk did a score for it, and it was like the craziest shit. Because I was pretty like sheltered musically. Like we just had CDs that my dad or mom would put in the car. So it was like a lot of like alternative rock shit. And I mean, there's a lot of good music in there, but I'd never heard electronic music really until then. And that soundtrack like inspired the fuck out of me. I was like, you can do that like in a movie? Because I think movie soundtracks always sort of like hit me in a certain place, like the combination of like the visual and the sonic shit. So yeah, after that I got like heavily into Daft Punk. And then into like Justice, and so like my YouTube recommended just eventually like slowly evolved from like Daft Punk to Justice, like Deadmau5, like all this different shit. So that's sort of how I came across the Madion shit.
Yeah, and you definitely grew up in a town that was not very popular for concerts, right? So what was your experience with like live shows? Like tell everyone about where you grew up and kind of what your childhood experience was like. I
think like the only concert I had been to prior to like producing shit would have been like Train. I think. And that was in another town. So like we just didn't have concerts. We'd have like bar concerts, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But nobody would come to our town to like perform. But yeah, I think like Train and like one other like smaller alternative band.
Do you think growing up where you did influence the type of music that you wanted to make, or how did that play a role in your artist journey?
Like where I grew up?
Yeah.
I think, yeah, probably. I think if you're any place in the world or any place even just like in the US, you'll sort of have a different take on things, like depending on where you're from. I think a smaller town, it's less easy to distract yourself with like events and like people and like all this different shit. So like my music's definitely more like reflective, I think, and like introverted as a result of that. So I think it's definitely like had an effect for sure.
And where are you from? Give the people some context here.
I'm from Lompoc, California. It's a small town. It's like an hour north of Santa Barbara.
And so for context, this guy, when he comes to play shows like Rising Tide, he has to hop on a 4-hour train to come down to LA.
The Surfliner, the Pacific Surfliner, dude. It's the shit. They give you snacks. They give you water. They check in on you. It's fucking awesome.
So we're going to skip ahead a little bit here. Obviously, you started making music at age 12. You said you started songwriting a couple years later. Talk to me about sort of your early experience with releasing music on SoundCloud, Spotify. What was the landscape like at the time? And how do you remember some of your first songs as an artist?
I started releasing on SoundCloud and YouTube. So like I would just make like I would make the shittiest possible cover art in MS Paint and then put that, like I'd go into like iMovie or something and then slap the music over that and then just throw it up on YouTube. But I did that for a while, and I had like probably 15 different like artist projects that were like all pretty bad up until like the tail end of it. But yeah, I think primarily SoundCloud. And I remember I had like one remix, like a Nick Jonas remix that like got like 150,000 plays or something. I was like, holy fuck, dude. And like all my friends were freaking out. It was like the biggest thing. But yeah, then with the Bloody White shit, I just like started on SoundCloud. And then that's sort of how like I gained a bit of momentum with that.
What was the genesis behind Bloody White, and what does that artist project symbolize to you?
The genesis of Bloody White was I got sent to a boarding school by my parents, like a troubled teens boarding school. And when I was there, like we didn't have any, like no phones, no laptops, no nothing. So I couldn't produce, which was like my only outlet at the time, really. And so I just had like this guitar that I brought from home, which I don't know how to play guitar at all. And I didn't then. And so that's like all I had. And then, so it kind of just like forced me to start writing lyrics, because like I could hold like pitch and stuff. I didn't understand my singing voice fully yet, but I needed that sort of musical outlet while I was there. So I just, by proxy of like not having the means to do what I was used to, I sort of just started writing songs. And then when I came back, I had all these lyrics in a notebook, and I was like, might as well slap these on some beats and see how it goes.
And thus Bloody White was born.
Yep. Yeah.
And what does the name Bloody White mean to you?
Man, that's a deep one. I think I sort of, it's a little like angsty for sure. I thought of it when I was 17. But at the time it was like, the idea was my parents had just split up, and it was like a pretty rough split up. And neither of them could really take care of me at the time. Like my mom was really struggling. My dad was traveling for work. So that's when I got sent to the boarding school. And like while I was there, I was just doing like a lot of reflecting on like, because my parents had a pretty great relationship, like from an outside perspective, and everything just sort of like blew up like overnight. So it was definitely like a shock to like me and my sister and like all of our family friends and all that. So the name Bloody White initially was blood stains white. And that was basically just like symbolic of blood being like sin or like wrongdoing or whatever, staining something that's like white or like pure or whatever. So like my parents in this case, like I sort of looked at them as like these sort of like angelic, perfect like beings, because they just didn't share any of their shit. And so, and when all of that shit blew up, that kind of, threw it in my face that like, oh, they're like people too. And like everyone's got their shit.
Yeah.
So
and I feel like I find that kind of coming through in your music, in terms of the style of music that you make and sort of what your songs are about. I feel like it very much highlights a specific moment, place, and time where you're trying to depict, just kind of like different scenery that I feel like is very like poignant and like relevant to the day-to-day life that you live. Yeah.
I mean, I try to include as much, like, I try not to get like super, super personal or specific, but yeah. I mean, I don't know. It feels silly to me to like write music about something that you're not feeling. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? I mean, I guess it's fun to like write from like somebody else's perspective or whatever. Like there's creative ways to do it. But I think at the end of the day, like music is supposed to be an expression of the artist. So yeah, I mean, I try to make it as personal as I can afford to.
And so we're at like age 17, right? Bloody White's been birthed. You're kind of releasing some music, putting it on SoundCloud and YouTube. You mentioned in your Modern Romance blog post, you started to, have a team that was interested in you. You started to take a couple label meetings in LA and New York. Just tell me very briefly about that chapter of your music career and kind of what was going on at that time.
Yeah, so this sort of small like publication, Fashionably Early, found my music on SoundCloud, and one of the guys that was like kind of helping curate with them, he like hit me up. He was at the time an A&R at Island, and he took a lot of interest in me and sort of pushed me to take these certain meetings, because like I was getting like some emails from like A&Rs and shit, because the SoundCloud stuff was sort of starting to like pop off like a little bit. But yeah, so I mean, I just ended up like taking these different meetings with these labels, and like that was probably like a year or two period of just like sort of becoming acquainted with like the traditional music industry, and it was like the most demoralizing shit I've ever been a part of, because I don't know, it's because like I just want to make like cool beats and like play shows and shit, but like all of the extra like fluff and like you need to like hype yourself up and like all of this like you need to be a certain kind of like person for a label to like fuck with you like that. And so like it was just, I don't know, it wasn't a fun like year or year and a half for me, but yeah.
And you mentioned at this point, this is when you took a break, right? This is kind of like 2020-ish, 2021. And you kind of mentioned that you came back from these meetings. You're feeling a little bit, let's call it just discouraged about kind of like the trajectory of the music industry. And you kind of ended up maybe like reflecting a bit on like what it meant to be an artist and kind of what it meant for you in your career.
Yeah. I mean, at that time I was sort of just like, it's almost like killing me more to like try to make a living off of this, like mentally and emotionally. So I feel like I should just like resign myself to delivering burritos and then like coming home and like having this thing that I can like, because it felt like something was like intruding on like a sanctuary for me. Like music, like making music is like sort of, it's like cliche and whatever, but it's like sort of a safe, like free place for, it's like the one free place that I have, you know what I mean? So it felt like having these different forces sort of pushing and pulling me to make one thing or another was fucking with that, and I did not like that at all. So I was just like, I'll bite the bullet and I'll just like get a regular job and like still enjoy making music, because I just want to enjoy making music.
And it was right around this time that you started linking up with Daniel, is that right?
Yeah.
Nice.
We started doing Zoom sessions.
And what was that origin story for those who don't know? How'd you guys end up linking up the first time?
I think he DM'd me like a year prior to us actually like officially meeting, and I didn't see it. And then fast forward a year, my manager at the time, he sent me Daniel's music. He's like, hey, this kid like reached out, he wants to work with you, like do you want to make stuff with him? And I was like, I listened to his shit and I was like, this guy's sick. So yeah. And then he was honestly like the first other artist that I worked with where it actually like clicked like pretty immediately, where like we just got in a flow and we just started doing sessions like weekly, because I think we sort of balanced each other out because he's pretty like he's got a pretty analytical brain when it comes to music. He's a super creative dude, but he sort of tamed my like very like abstract ideas and like structured them. So I think we balanced each other out in that regard, where I would like provide these like really like out there ideas, and then he'd be able to like sort of reel them in a bit and like make them more digestible. So it was good.
And it was around this time that you guys had started doing some music NFT stuff, right? So I'm sure that came up in conversation at some point. And is that how you kind of discovered Catalog and some of these early platforms? Yeah.
Well, he threw that show, and he was nervous as fuck, dude, preparing that show. I remember he was working so hard on it. but yeah, I mean, if you guys listen to his podcast, you heard, but he invited a bunch of people, and that's how he met you. So he mentioned that, and he was like, yeah, he like told me about this music NFT shit, and I think I'm gonna do it. And then he started explaining it to me. I was like, that sounds interesting. I wonder what that's all about. And then,
Was that your first reaction, or tell me about like what was when you first heard about dropping NFTs? Like, what was your mind like? Because mind you, for context here,
I didn't know very much about music or about NFTs in general,
which I find fascinating.
Yeah, I knew about like Bored Apes and shit, and I was like, okay. I mean, that's like, I mean, it's like the technology is definitely like interesting from what I like know about it, but it wasn't like super exciting to me.
Yeah,
like immediately. But the music NFT thing seemed like a very cool opportunity, like a cool new thing. So.
And what I find interesting about that is, you're in this unique class of artists where you basically downloaded MetaMask to start dropping music NFTs. Like, it's not like you were like flipping tokens or trying to trade Bored Apes, and then you like stumbled into like catalog. It's like, no, you actually got your wallet because you wanted to sell your music as NFTs.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not like a fucking stocks guy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like, I wouldn't have gotten into this shit otherwise, I don't think. But I'm more than happy to be here.
And so what did that chapter end up becoming for you? Like, talk to me about, you had your early days on SoundCloud and then YouTube, you had these label meetings, and then you started dropping records on catalog. Did that feel like it was a turning point for you in your artist career?
Yeah. Well, I think initially it was just like, let's put the thing up and see like what happens, and like continue to drive DoorDash. But I think after the first sale, that was a big moment for me, because I was like, I think I crashed my car the day prior to that sale. And so like I was like driving, and like, when you're driving DoorDash, you have to like you're paying for all the gas and shit. So like at the end of the day, it's like sometimes it's pretty tough if you're not getting like good tips. So I was just like in this like dark place, like driving around all the time, like delivering shit. And then I crashed my car, and it was just like the saddest shit imaginable. And then the next day I sold the shit, because I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do for I can't fix this. And like, I'm not going to drive around this like barely working vehicle doing something that I hate. So it was just like a really depressing thing. And then the next day, like, it was like some destiny shit.
I mean, this is what I find fascinating about your journey is like when I talk to artists about why I'm excited about music NFTs, I point to case studies like yours, because these NFTs, they actually meant something very meaningful in your life, right? Like when you had this sale, you mentioned that your car crashed, this ETH was not like it was you earning an extra $100,000 on top of you to go like fuck around and do some shit with. Like this is like this is putting food on the table, And I think when you release NFTs like that, like it really means something to you. And I could tell from the way that you were talking about it and expressing these sales on Twitter, like it really just felt like it was such a personal part of your journey that for someone as a collector, it's like, okay, I want to support this artist because I know that these NFTs mean a lot to them in the grand spectrum of their artist project as a whole.
Bro, it was unfucking believable. Like, it's still unbelievable that this is like, it's still difficult for me to like digest that this is my job, that I like get to do this. Like, I'm so lucky. But yeah, I mean, it means like a fuck ton, because like not many people can say that they get to do what they love and like put food on the table with it. Like, that's the biggest blessing.
That's facts. And so take me through that projection. So you basically get onto catalog, you're selling some early one-of-ones, you're working with Daniel. Sound comes out around this time and you start to be one of the early artists on Sound. How do you start to develop the way that you're releasing music around dropping these songs as NFTs first?
Like how I would sort of like package these things?
Yeah, like how did you think about minting music? Like when you would go to catalog or Sound, like how did you pick what songs to put up? Like how are you thinking about dropping? Like it's just a very new mentality as an artist to think about, I'm going to sell 50 editions. I'm going to do this as a one-of-one. Like talk to me about your thought process as you were going and minting these things.
Yeah, I mean, I think initially I just wanted to provide like the widest scope that I could, like genre-wise. Like I wanted to be like, okay, here are like initially, this is like a new audience of people. Like here's all of the shit that I'm interested in and that I can do. So like if you go to my catalog, there's a lot. I mean, even if you go on Sound, there's like a lot of different genres now. But I think initially I was just like, I want to make it very apparent like what collectors can expect to hear from me. and that it's quite varied. But yeah, I mean, and then as far as like pricing and editions and all of that, like I sort of like defer to like Daniel or like whoever, because like that sort of stuff, I don't know. I don't ever want to feel like I'm being greedy, and I kind of try to check in with people as to like what feels fair, and like here's the song, like here's where I'm at in this sort of space, like what feels like a decent, edition size, price, and so forth.
What I find so compelling about your artist project is that your NFTs are basically selling because you just make great music, and I think that's like very obvious, the same principle, but it's not like you're super active on Twitter, right? It's not like you're joining like Twitter spaces every day and trying to like really shout from the rooftops that you're dropping music NFTs. Like I feel like you've just kind of found this pocket where you just put out great music and people are recognizing that and people are collecting it. And I guess I'm curious to hear, like, how does that feel as someone that's kind of had, in a relationship with SoundCloud and YouTube and whatnot? Like, what does this pocket feel like relative to some of the other places that you put your music out on?
It's definitely different. I mean, I'm just like honored. I'm fucking blessed that like anybody listens to my shit in the first place, let alone like buys it and collects it. But I think it's I don't know. It definitely does feel like you're getting to see more of your like true fans, like people that just really fuck with what you do, which is cool, Like you're not gonna get that on SoundCloud. Like you'll get a like and like a comment and whatever, but like this sort, you can kind of like see, like by the numbers, like who fucks with you and who, So I mean that's a very cool feeling to see that.
Yeah, and I mean, even taking it a step further, I feel like most, if not all of your live shows so far, your DJ sets, performances have been around Web3 based events. They don't feel like Web3 events, but it's just really fascinating to me that like when you're playing this music live, you're almost playing to an audience that appreciates you and your artist project because they came to know it through collecting your NFTs.
Yeah. No, it's fucking weird, dude. Like it's weird walking into a room and like people know who you are through the internet. Like in any instance, like it just happens to be like Web3 in this case, but like it's fucking weird. But it's cool. It's
definitely weird. And I think the thing that I'm excited about is I talk to you a lot about like, how do we just make NFTs cool, right? And like, how do we make this feel like something that kids fuck with? And it's definitely a lot harder said than done. But I think the one thing that I really appreciate about these events that we've been doing and this music that you've been dropping is it doesn't feel like we're trying to pitch this as the fact that it's NFTs. It just feels like a wave, and a vibe and a culture. And I feel like you, amongst, a select handful of other artists, are really like pioneering what it means to be involved in this culture without trying to like go on TikTok and be like, buy my NFTs, or like I'm an NFT guy or something like that. Like you just happen to be in Web3, but it's not like that's like your conscious branding decision. It's just kind of like right time, right place,
Yeah, and I think that's the way to package these things if you want them to, like if you want people to pick up on it and you want to like create a movement around this shit. I think it is just like come to this sick show, and it also happens to be a Web3 event. So like if you fuck with that, you can get involved with that. But like just come hang out for the music. You know what I mean? Don't be like join our NFT thing. You know what I mean? Like that's not as cool. You know?
I had a fun moment at the show that you played last night in LA where we put a QR code up for this new project, Modern Romance, that you're working on that I want to talk about. But it's just funny to me to think about this experience where you can like have a link to something that you can like collect the song in real time, but it's kind of a meme because it's like an NFT thing. So it's obviously a meme, but then you're like also super serious. And I'm like, buy these NFTs on some real shit. But I don't know, as an artist, like how do you even think about people collecting your music? Like, what does that feel like relative to someone adding it to a playlist or liking it or saving it? Like, how do you think about the differences between someone collecting your music and someone just like sharing it on their Instagram story?
I think it's a much more blatant way of somebody letting you know that they like your music, so it's every time somebody collects my shit, it's an honor, and I appreciate that shit. Like the fact that somebody's like reaching into their pocket and like paying for my art is, that's a blessing.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, I think this takes us basically to present day. So last week you announced this project called Modern Romance. This is EP that obviously I'm super excited about. But for those who don't know, can you tell us a little bit about the Modern Romance project?
Yeah. So this is an EP that I started creating probably like maybe 4 or 5 months ago. I had this intro song, Crush, and I fucking loved it. I loved it so much. I was like, I need to like make a project that sounds like this, that like lives in this world. So over the next like few months, that's sort of like what I did. I sort of just created a bunch of like demos and went through them. And honestly, like most of them clicked pretty quickly, I think. Like pretty early on. Like usually when I'm creating shit and it's like not happening for me in like the first 15 minutes, I'm like, I'll delete it because it's, I don't know. Like I try my best not to like force anything. And this EP felt like very natural, which I was very happy about. And it all felt like it lived in the same world. Yeah. And then on Catalog, I was making a lot of my own cover arts and shit. And so like I had a little bit of experience with that. And like this year especially, I got like very into the visual art side of things. So this project, the music, I was so in love with the music that it sort of lit a fire under my ass to like create some accompanying visuals that I thought, fit in the same world and that I fucked with. So that's what I did.
Modern Romance, baby.
Modern Romance.
Yeah, and I think for me, it's really a turning point for your artist project because you've been dropping singles on Sound and on Catalog for the better half of the past year and a half at this point, right? And to me, I feel like Modern Romance is really your first collection that has like a clear canvas around it, is saying like, hey, like this is a Bloody White project, as you kind of alluded to in your tweet storm. And I feel like it really visualizes the full spectrum of your music and your art, and it really connects those two in a way that says like, hey, if I want to come discover what it means to be a fan of Bloody White, in my personal opinion, I think that the Modern Romance project is honestly the best way just to see from top to bottom the spectrum of the music that you make, the relationship between the audio and the visual art, and then frankly just like how people should be thinking about your music. I feel like the canvas for it is very, I almost think of you like a fine artist, man, It's like I don't feel like you're trying to put your music out here and sell like millions of editions and get like millions of fans. And like obviously that's something that everyone wants. But when I think about a project like Modern Romance, like it feels like I could see that shit in a museum, And I think being able to release that in a way that says, hey, there's a fixed number of editions for these amount of songs. There's kind of a specific time and place with it. It has a physical component to it. I don't really think that you can do that in traditional music right now. And so I feel like you leveraging this kind of pocket that you've been developing a focus on and using that as a way to really sort of solidify this project in your artist's history is like a very special moment in time.
Yeah, I feel like these sorts of like projects, these sort of like I guess like high art, as you say, like projects, I think are only possible with like The Weeknd or like these like huge acts. Because they can afford to sort of like take risks and and people fuck with them so much that it's like they're open to seeing new shit from them. So I think sort of I guess like leveraging the fact that I know there's a good amount of people in the Web3 space that fuck with my music. I want to like provide that like sort of next creative step and like give them something new to chew on that feels like a cohesive body of work. And I feel like I did that with this, and I'm very proud of it and stoked that it's coming out.
Absolutely. And by the time that this goes live, you're going to be able to collect it. So it should be pretty exciting.
Yeah.
And I guess moving forward from here, for people that are following, what should they be expecting from you from the next 6 months, 12 months, next year? Like, how do you think about where you're at today with your artist project and where you want to be in a year from now?
It's a good question. I think I'm going to be trying to roll out some music in like on Spotify and all of that shit. Like that'll always be going on in the background. But as far as Web3 stuff, I think, after this project, I got something else that I'm working on. It's very different from Modern Romance. But I think I'm going to put together an EP of like very sort of different electronic music than you've probably heard from me. But yeah, this year, it's just putting together projects. I want to try to get like two very different EPs out after this one this year. And and then just play shows. And I want to learn to snowboard as well. I would like to learn that.
I love
But
that.
that's it. That's what you can expect from me.
And I guess there's just sort of some closing commentary here. What I really value about your perspective is that you always keep it very real when it comes to like Web3 and NFTs and kind of all of the memes around it. How do you think about sort of like the current positioning of the market in terms of, you know, you're selling music NFTs, we're doing a project like Modern Romance, but obviously you've definitely been very vocal about things like bring back rarity or just kind of having commentary on like the current state of the market in a way that feels very accurate and representative of where things are at. Like, how would you describe where in the grand scheme of things we are as a community when it comes to like Web3 music and everything that's kind of happening as a whole?
Damn, that's a big question. I feel like we're sort of at like we're at a very like weird stage right now. I think honestly, like we're in sort of like music NFT purgatory right now.
Yep.
I think it is like right now. I think it's just like the main thing is to, you know, get kids to think that it's cool. Like that's the biggest thing. Because like right now we got like I think we have, you know, a good amount of the people that were here from the beginning that stayed because they just fucked with the idea of music NFTs and they fuck with the music, which is sick. But like now I think it's time to sort of like widen that audience and bring new people in. So and ETH is up. It's gonna age poorly. It's gonna age really bad.
ETH is up, relatively
It's gonna
speaking.
drop to $800.
No, it's some
tomorrow.
real shit though. I mean, like ETH at $1,500 is pretty crazy because if you think about it, like this reminds me a lot of where we were at 2018, 2019. DeFi summer was kind of starting. ETH was like 100, 150 bucks. Couldn't pay anyone to talk to them about crypto. If you tried to, they would laugh you out of the room. And now I go around LA and I'm like, yeah, I do music and I do NFTs. Like, oh, NFTs are still a thing? Like I thought those were dead. I'm like, yeah, they're definitely dead. So like to your point, like
Yeah.
purgatory is very real.
Yeah,
And I think that the Trojan horse or the silver lining here is like, how do you actually influence the societal viewpoint on NFTs to get back to that point where kids are like, yo, like I actually want to collect that song. And frankly, I don't really know how to do that. I think we're all kind of figuring that out. But I do think that there's sort of a common realization that in order for any of this to be relevant at all, we need to find a way to make it cool because that's going to be the only thing that allows us to really drive and transcend to a new audience in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it's just sort of like washing off the residual like Bored Ape and CryptoPunk sort of like stigma. You know what I mean? Which will take it. I think that'll take some time because I think a lot of people, whenever they heard about NFTs, that's what they heard about is like that sort of stuff.
Yeah, yourself included, huh?
Which is yeah, myself included. I mean, it's I don't know. I think if that happened like one time, it would have been cool, like just to see what happened. But then, you know, everybody starts sort of creating their collection of 10,000 like shitty things. And that sort of I think ruined like the public the public perception of music NFTs because it's easy to clown on people like, you know, just like shilling their project that they didn't put too much effort into. So yeah, I think we gotta recover from that first.
History repeats itself, man. I mean, you saw this with ICOs, you saw this with DeFi, with DAOs, NFTs, whatever the hot trend is. You know, Web3 specifically, it's going to be replicated very fast because people want to try and make a quick buck. But, you know, I think it's something that we need to be conscious of for this next cycle as well. Is like when music NFTs do start to click and there start to be artists that are popping off, there's going to be a moment when you have like 10K music NFT playbook that people are like running over and over again.
Yeah.
So I think for me, the goal is like, how do you actually find the equivalent of what the 10K PFP project is for music? And if we can reach that moment and have the collectors of that moment be kids that are in college and kids that are actually helping to refine and influence the next chapter of music as a whole, I think that's where things start to get really, really exciting.
Yeah, I mean, it would be cool if the music is good. That's it. That's all I'll say about it. Like the music has to be fucking good. You know what I mean? And then do whatever. You can do whatever. If the art's good, fucking run it.
If the art is good, run it. So Bloody White, this is probably your first time actually going on a real podcast, huh? More or less like first or second, huh?
Yeah, this will be the first released pod. The other podcast I was on did not go well. So yeah, I think this will be the first released one.
Well, there's some alpha coming on that second one. But in closing thoughts here, what do you want people to know about you moving forward, and what's some things that people can look forward to in the months to come?
Modern Romance soon, or I guess now when this is coming out. Very heavy bass music. probably sad piano music.
Jazz music, maybe.
Yeah, possibly jazz music.
Yeah, this guy, we're going through the Modern Romance upload flow, and he's playing smooth jazz at 11 p.m. on a Sunday.
I need it. I'll fall asleep to that.
Well, there's obviously a lot more that we could get into here, but for context for the podcast, this guy's got to catch a train, 3.5-hour train back home to Lompoc. So, Bloody, thank you for coming on, man. I'm really excited about Modern Romance. It's going to be fantastic. You know, if you're listening to this and you're able to come and see this guy play a show, I highly recommend it. It's an extremely electric experience. And the one thing I'll say, man, is I don't know how you do it, but every set of yours, you get people to break dance, you know? So,
dude, I don't know how I do it either, but I'm fucking, you know, it's an honor. It's an honor to have people break dancing.
I love it. Well, episode 3, Invest in Music with Bloody White. Thanks for coming out, man. I look forward to seeing what you do.
Thanks for having me, man.
All right. Cheers.